Right now, multiple escalations are unfolding across the Middle East simultaneously, and most of them aren't making it to mainstream Arabic news. Gulf states are privately warning that their air defense stockpiles are running out. Iran has reportedly threatened to strike one of the most sensitive nuclear sites in the world. And behind the scenes, a ground operation involving Kurdish fighters may already be in motion. Tonight, we're going to walk through every single one of these developments, sourced directly from Western and Israeli media, because the picture they're painting is very different from what's being reported regionally. And some of what you're about to hear could reshape the entire trajectory of this conflict. Let's start with a report that dropped from the Financial Times. According to the British newspaper, a Gulf source, who refused to be named, told the paper something alarming. This source said that their country's air defense missile stockpiles are dangerously close to running out. They reportedly requested an emergency shipment from the United States, and while Washington agreed to send it, nothing has arrived yet. That's not the worst part. The source went on to say that Iranian missiles and drones have been far more effective than anyone had originally estimated. Now, this isn't just a Gulf problem. According to the same reporting, Israel is also dealing with a shortage of interceptor missiles. They, too, need an emergency resupply. So you have two key players in this conflict, Gulf nations and Israel, both quietly admitting that their air defense systems are under strain, and the American resupply hasn't come through. That's a massive vulnerability, and it's not the kind of thing you'll see on state-run networks. The Financial Times didn't name the country. They didn't name the official. But the implications are enormous, because if the air defenses are depleting faster than expected, the next wave of attacks could look very different from the last. Hit subscribe right now if you want the truth without the corporate filter. We cover what they won't every single day. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we expose the next major story. Do it now. And speaking of the next wave, here's where things get even more serious. According to intelligence assessments attributed to Saudi sources, and this was shared with American media, the Houthis are preparing to launch a large-scale attack on Saudi Arabia within hours. Not days, hours. The report describes the deployment of ballistic missiles and armed drones aimed at major targets inside the kingdom. In response, Saudi authorities have apparently taken exceptional security measures around King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, including the deployment of additional military forces and the activation of advanced air defense systems in sensitive areas. But it goes beyond Saudi Arabia. If the Houthis fully enter this conflict, analysts warn they won't just target the kingdom. The UAE would also be in range. Think about what that means. Iran has already launched over 1,000 projectiles from its own territory. If the Houthis open a second front from the south, you're looking at a pincer scenario. Iran from one direction, the Houthis from the other. That's not a hypothetical anymore. That's an active intelligence warning from Saudi sources. And here's the kicker. Saudi officials have reportedly made it clear that if the Houthis officially join Iran in attacks on the kingdom, Riyadh will respond with overwhelming force. Right now, the Saudis are allowing the U.S. and Israel to carry out their operations against Iran without direct Saudi involvement. But a Houthi escalation could change that calculus entirely. Now let's talk about what might be the most alarming development of the night. According to Reuters, and this is Reuters, not a random social media account, a military source within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said that Iran is prepared to strike Israel's Dimona nuclear facility. The condition, according to this source, is straightforward. If Iran becomes convinced that the United States and Israel are actively working to topple the Iranian regime, Dimona becomes a target. Let that sink in for a moment. Iran does not possess nuclear weapons, but striking a nuclear facility like Dimona could produce the equivalent effect of a nuclear detonation in terms of radioactive fallout. You'd be looking at catastrophic environmental contamination across southern Israel, and potentially far beyond. Qatar's foreign minister actually made a related point recently, warning that any nuclear-related strike in the region could contaminate the drinking water of Gulf nations. So even countries not directly involved in the fighting could face devastating consequences. The IRGC source's statement was published in English as well. Iran will target Israel's nuclear site Dimona if the U.S. and Israel pursue regime change. That's not speculation from an anonymous blog. That's a named military institution making a conditional threat through one of the world's most recognized news agencies. Whether they follow through or not, the fact that this statement was made publicly changes the strategic equation. But the escalation isn't limited to missiles and drones. According to the Associated Press, one of the largest and most respected wire services in the world, Kurdish groups based in northern Iraq are preparing for a potential joint ground operation with American support inside Iranian territory. The report describes these groups as being positioned to cross the Iraqi-Iranian border and link up with Kurdish populations already inside Iran. Now, almost immediately after this report surfaced, two things happened. First, an official in the Kurdistan regional government denied that any Kurdish fighters had crossed into Iran. Second, Iran's Tasnim news agency published a similar denial, with an Iranian official saying there was no truth to reports of a Kurdish ground incursion. Here's the thing, though. These denials are completely expected. During active conflict, no party confirms operations before they're complete. The Kurdistan regional government has a strong incentive to distance itself from any cross-border activity, because Iran could retaliate directly against Iraqi Kurdistan. And Iran has every reason to deny that a ground incursion is even possible, because acknowledging it would undermine domestic morale. What's significant is that these reports came from the Associated Press, not from a tabloid or a partisan outlet. Fox News later ran a more aggressive version of the story, claiming that thousands of Iraqi Kurds were already launching a ground assault inside Iran. That version hasn't been independently confirmed, but the fact that multiple Western outlets are reporting on Kurdish mobilization suggests something is happening, even if the full picture isn't clear yet. Meanwhile, in Washington, a political battle is playing out that could determine how long this conflict lasts. The U.S. Senate voted to block a resolution that would have forced a debate on the war. The vote was 53 to 47, a narrow margin that tells you the Senate is deeply divided. That means at least two Democratic senators crossed party lines to vote with Republicans. On the House side, reports indicate that lawmakers have effectively given President Trump a blank check to continue military operations. But here's the important detail. The margin is thin, very thin, and the Democratic opposition isn't going to let this go. They'll push for another vote. They'll lobby those two crossover senators. And in a situation where the majority is this slim, it doesn't take much to shift the outcome. Some analysts have pointed out that AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobbying group, has significant influence in Congress. But even AIPAC's reach has limits when the numbers are this close. So while Trump currently has authorization to proceed, that authorization is fragile. One shift in political wind, one major incident that turns public opinion, and the legislative landscape could change overnight. Now here's something that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention. According to Axios, citing journalist Barak Ravid, one of the most connected reporters covering U.S.-Israel relations, Iran has been sending messages to the United States over the past several days. These messages were reportedly transmitted through Gulf intermediaries and other regional channels, which likely include countries like Egypt and Turkey. The content of these messages hasn't been fully disclosed, but the implication is clear. Iran is looking for a diplomatic off-ramp. It wants to return to some form of negotiation. And the American response? According to a U.S. official quoted in the Axios report, the Trump administration treated these messages as, and I'm quoting here, nonsense. They didn't respond. They didn't engage. They didn't even acknowledge receipt. That silence is a strategic signal in itself. It tells you that the U.S. is not interested in de-escalation right now. It tells you that Trump and his team believe time is on their side, that Iran's missile stockpiles will deplete, that the military pressure will build, and that eventually the Iranian government will be forced into a position of weakness. Whether that calculation is correct remains to be seen. But what we know for certain is that Iran reached out and Washington slammed the door shut. And Trump himself apparently made a revealing comment behind closed doors. According to reports, while sitting in a meeting with senior officials, he joked that he had to cut the meeting short because too much is happening in the war. That suggests he's deeply engaged in the operational side of this conflict. But perhaps more telling was another comment attributed to him. He reportedly said he was shocked that Iran struck Gulf states. That raises a serious question. If the President of the United States didn't anticipate Iranian strikes on Gulf nations, what does that say about the intelligence assessments he was receiving before the escalation began? Was the administration caught off guard? Or was this a calculated risk that didn't play out as expected? On the Iranian side, the IRGC is projecting strength. A statement from the Revolutionary Guard said that the pace and lethality of Iranian attacks will increase significantly in the coming period. This directly contradicts American claims that a significant portion of Iran's missile arsenal has already been destroyed. The IRGC is essentially telling the world, you haven't seen anything yet. Whether that's bravado or a genuine operational capability remains to be seen. But the message is clear. Iran is not backing down. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the economic